Hi there, and welcome to She Spice. For some time now, the Ways have been hauling a few Hollywood elites for taking their brainchild unnerving film and ripping them off. Well, it seems to be Marlon Wayans, the most youthful weenkin, has entered the talk and is presently name-dropping the Hollywood big shots who took the family's thought as. You all know the Wayans ruled the farce kind for quite a long time, with various hit motion pictures dropping at regular intervals building themselves a domain worth close to a portion of $1 billion. Keys yet, out of nowhere we quit catching wind of the wands. Totally it resembled they evaporated off the outer layer of the earth. Supposedly, the wands' vanishing act was extremely conscious on the grounds that besides the fact that specific Hollywood elites took their thoughts, however they additionally attempted to renounce them and ruin their inheritance. Well, it seems to be Marlon Wayans is burnt out on keeping quiet about this entire business, and he's naming individuals who did his family messy yet. Was frightening film truly taken from the wands? And is that why we haven't actually heard much about them for some time? Currently, we should get into it, return to the frightening film establishment, and do it yet Weinstein claims alarming film. No, they off the Weinstein twinization, they off it. They out, and that is the reason I would get back to it. Now I believe that so Marlon Wayans has been giving a progression of meetings, discussing how Hollywood did his family filthy, and took cash as well as their inheritance, and it appears as though individuals are at long last focusing on what Marlon needs to say, since he's not simply recounting stories this time. He's naming names and dropping receipts for those of you all that have neglected or for the youngins who have hardly any familiarity with the Wayans. We should give you a little setting so the Wayans family are in a real sense the rulers of farce films. We should travel once more into the past to 1988 when Keenen Ivory Wayans made his first appearance at the helm in the 1988 dark spoof, I Will Make You Sucky. Next up was the Emmy-winning portrayal satire show Unfiltered and Fabulous, which had an elegant cast containing Jim Carrey, Tommy Davidson, Jamie Foxx, etc. For Unfiltered and Full of Life, there wasn't anyone or any point that was beyond reach. They vigorously spoofed different mainstream societies, political figures, and minutes, and the crowd was gobbling it up. I mean, this show could never have come at a superior time. The Wayans proceeded with the spoof pattern in 1996 with Don't Be a Danger to South Focal while drinking your juice in the hood, which satirized a few of the most well-known hood films at the time. A portion of the eminent ones that aren't threats are squeezed. South Focal, Lovely Equity Friday, Young Men in the Hood, and Danger to Society, Don't Be a Threat proceeded to make $2 $1 million in the cinema world. It made multiple times more than its $3.8 million spending plan. You all were over here haphazardly making the outline for making hits and bringing in a lot of cash. While they had this thing open after Don't Be a Hazard was delivered. Sean and Marlon began chipping away at their own task, staying with the farce business. However, they chose to zero in on doing satires of the ghastliness classification. Keenen later uncovered that he considered the undertaking a reclamation for himself after wiping out of Unfiltered and Full of Life. Between the splendid project and the Wayans siblings' comedic virtuoso, they would deliver a film that would break such countless limits and endure for the long haul. They named it a terrifying film, and it laid the basis for the eagerly awaited continuation. A startling film is a spoof of a few motion pictures in the frightfulness classification. Remembering Shout for a 20-minute meeting with Stream Magazine, Marlon Wayans said he and his sibling Sean chose to compose an alarming film while they were watching one of the motion pictures they would ultimately spoof. He said, I think we were watching I Understand What You Did. The previous summer, we said I understood what I would truly do. The following summer, I will ridicule every one of these damn motion pictures. I'm so burned out from seeing them. I watched Shout until I needed to shout. I've seen I Understand What You Did. The previous summer, there was such a lot that I needed to turn into a killer and kill anyone who made one of these films. Cian likewise discussed his motivation for the film, saying we just tracked down these slasher motion pictures to be somewhat crazy, and I figured it would be entertaining to do a spoof, yet it was one of the hardest motion pictures to compose. It seems to be a senseless droll film, yet it was anything but a simple film to execute. Sean and Marlon likewise discussed how the content went through a few drafts for them to calibrate it. When we originally composed it, we composed it with a shakedown lead, yet Keenen told us, and he was correct, that it wasn't consistent with the class, so we switched things up and made our champion, a white young lady, lead a little die white young lady as per the siblings. Marlon composed the main screenplay for the previous summer. I shouted on the grounds that Friday, the 13th, fell on Halloween. However, that one simply didn't cut it. We saw such countless various renditions of this film. We worked with our sibling Keenan, and we composed a dark draft, a white draft, a secondary school draft, and a school draft, but they actually needed to bird of prey their content from one maker to another to think of one that was able to create terrifying film. 10 drafts and numerous dismissals later, the Weinstein siblings at last took a risk on the Wayans and gave the venture the go-ahead. After quite a while of holding up, the startling film was delivered on July 7, 2000. The film follows a gathering of secondary school understudies who inadvertently kill somebody, and subsequently they're tormented by a mass killer. Marlon and Sean are featured in the film, along with Regina Corridor and Anna Faris. The startling film would really change the existences of the Wayans and open them to a ton of things great and terrible, depending upon where you're looking from. It likewise left a mark on the world, breaking the record for the greatest netting movie coordinated by an African American at the time. Many individuals, particularly Wayans siblings, accepted that it resembled the perfect film at the ideal time, done by the perfect individuals. That is truly what I feel like it was, and you never realize another can occur. There's generally room for curiosity. The first startling film was made on a careful spending plan of $1 million anyway. Because of the splendid composition of the weigh-in, the film procured $110 million. After only 14 days, it would proceed to net an astounding $278 million overall, out of which $157 million came from the USA. Normally, fans needed a continuation, and Wayans siblings were glad to oblige. Unnerving Film 2 was delivered on July 4, 2001, just a year after the arrival of the initial segment. This time, the financial plan was $45 million, and the film earned north of $140 million overall. In spite of the fact that it didn't work out quite as well as the first, it was still extremely noteworthy regardless, and it made the studios a lot of cash. It was like the weigh-in had struck gold, just so you know. Unnerving Films 1 and 2 were created by Aspect Films as an auxiliary lamp diversion. It was unexpected in light of the fact that the frightening film likewise parodied Shout, which was delivered by Aspect Films. And got this, Aspect Films was previously utilized as Harvey and Sway Weinstein's marks inside Miramax and later turned into a piece of the Weinstein organization in 2005. Terrifying Films 1 and 2 were likewise conveyed by Miramax Films. So the point here is that Harvey Weinstein and his sibling Weave had their hands on each step of the creation, showcasing, and dispersion of the startling film. This smidgen is significant in light of the fact that, as per the double, UA and the Weinstein siblings terminated their roles as journalists on the film and took their thoughts. Marlon Wayans said in a meeting that I could compose a book on that entire thing. Sincerely, they certainly still owe us heaps of cash. What they did was downright terrible business due to the wild outcomes of terrifying films 1 and 2. Studios all around the nation were scrambling to comprehend what precisely was happening. Sway Weinstein said different studios simply happened. It resembled winning the Super Bowl, the most mind-boggling thing. Well, it would turn out that, as expected, the enormous studios were exclusively in it for the cash. They couldn't have cared less about the creative or political significance of the film, and we know this in light of the fact that Alarming Film 2 got, for the most part, regrettable surveys from pundits regardless of its business achievement. The Wayans were later convinced about how they were raced to make Alarming Film 2, in light of the fact that the enormous folks needed to get more cash flow. Marlon has completely faulted the studio for the disappointment of Terrifying Film 2, getting together with Startling Film 1 by 2003. Frightening Film 3 had been delivered anyway. The fans who had been enthusiastically holding up to experience the equivalent comedic objective that was parts 1 and 2 were disheartened. They immediately brought up a distinction with Tony, like something really didn't add up about it. Well, the straightforward clarification was that the Wayans were not engaged with the perusing or creation of Section 3 of 2003. Perusing Falcon Voices, journalist Ian Tycoon detailed that the primary thing I saw while watching the sneak peeks was that the Wayans siblings were missing. I was extremely frustrated. Sean and Marlon were the most entertaining people in the initial 2 movies. So Startling Film 3 previously had a tough ascension, although the Wayans haven't been especially boisterous about what truly made them quit delivering alarming films. Marlon Wayans has chosen to think about that obligation literally. And as per Marlon, his family never needed to quit being engaged with the unnerving film establishment. In a meeting, Marlon said individuals continued to fault us for doing frightening films 1 and 2, the amusing ones. Everyone thinks we left the establishment or sold it. Subscribe She Spice for more videos.